Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see y'all again. Can somebody just say hello so I know you hear me?
Hello.
Hi, Tim.
Thank you. Cynthia, Natalie. Natalie, how you doing? Haven't talked to you in a while.
Doing good, thanks. How about yourself?
Good.
Excellent.
So this year you'll have a better handle on ESP because it'll be your second.
That's the hope.
An expert now.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll give it just another minute or so. People are still joining, I see. Go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're actually going to create our New Year scenario, the 22-23 scenario. Now, I already created mine this morning in the morning session, so I'm not going to actually do it, but we'll step through the process of how to do it, and you guys should follow along and create yours as well. The first step is to open Scenario Explorer. Now, I just opened Scenario Explorer and it went behind my screen. So, well, then it popped up. But I was going to say another way to remember to find windows is this window submenu here. If you ever lose a window, because you will have a lot of windows start popping up, you can use this to get find a lost window. It'll pop it back up. Sometimes you'll minimize a window and it can be hard to find, especially like if you're using Citrix, it can be hard to find. So be sure and use that window option to find lost windows. And
Tim, yep. So this is Kim at Lincoln County. So I went into the blue. Is that the right one?
Yeah, blue's fine.
Okay. So when I do that, it wants a password. It says failed to validate ESP.
Oh, you know what? Carol had that this morning too. And Scott worked with her. Let me ping Scott and let him know you're having that problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll catch you up, Kim. Scott should be contacting you.
Thank you.
Okay, so another thing I would like for everyone to do, and this should always be the case, if you go to your view menu up here, everyone can see my screen, right? Oh, I said no, so I'm going to assume that's a yes. You go down to show log when applying. Make sure that is checked. And I'll show you what that is when you're creating your new year. It'll pop up a log that you can follow when it's doing things behind the scenes. Kim, Scott would like for you to start Team Viewer. If you look on that form that is asking for the password, on the right, there's buttons, the bottom button. It's got a little question mark on it. Do you see that?
I do, thank you.
Okay, yeah, start that. That's Team Viewer, and then Scott will be able to access your screen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so New Year. So the first thing to consider when creating a New Year scenario is which current year scenario, I don't know why it pops up and then goes away and then comes back. Which current year scenario to use as your basis for your New Year scenario. You can see here, I've already created mine, but you guys won't have a 22, 23 yet, but probably it will be your adopted scenario or the scenario in ESP that you use to create your adopted. And don't forget, you also have these statuses that you can set for scenarios. I'm going to right click. Let's say this was my adopted. You can right click. There's a sub menu called scenario status, and that's you can set that to be the adopted scenario. And all it does is just change it from modeling to adopted, just to help you realize what these scenarios are. You can see there's other statuses, approved, proposed, approved. So as you go through your process, you might want to update that status to help you keep track of what all of your scenarios are. You know, some districts only have 1 or 2 scenarios per year. I've seen some districts have up to 50 scenarios in 1 year, and that, you know, can get hard to keep track. As well, you have the label. This one is labeled demo. You can always right click and say update label, and that's just a text box you can get, you can type in to help track what the scenario is used for. So just a couple of small things to help you remember what each scenario is or what it's for. You can also delete scenarios, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So more than likely, the scenario that you're going to want to choose is the adopted scenario. And the reason why is because on your assumption calculations, these will be carried forward into the new year scenario. And more than likely, the assumption calculations you have in your adopted are your best ones that you want to copy forward. So that's why. Unless you have another scenario that you've created and you've made some changes in that you want to use as a basis, then you can use that one. But for generally speaking, it will be your adopted scenario or the last scenario that you used to create your adopted. So you simply right click, create scenario, then go over to the right and you would click new year scenario. So go ahead and click that. And you're going to be given a few options here. The first is to make sure that you have the correct database. And this is going to be the database where your 21, 22 adopted and working and employees live in. I believe everybody here is Visions. So in Visions, because what it's going to do is it's going to go to Visions and it's going to pull in your working scenario and your adopted scenario. And it's going to copy your working scenario into the model. And that will be the starting point of your financials. And then it will go to the employees tab. And then we'll go to the employees and pull in all of the employees as where they stand as of right now when you create this scenario. And it will pull them in and then copy them into the model, as well as the salary plans for the salary plan tab. So picking the right database is very important. These keep model data and keep model budgeted positions, that would be if you had a scenario that you have been keeping up to date on a daily or weekly basis. You've been keeping the scenario up to date, and you could, if you check these boxes, it would not reload. It would still reload, but it would not copy them into the model because we would be assuming that your model is already up to date. Most people do not do that, keep their scenarios up to date throughout the year. So more than likely, no one will check these, and we're going to do a fresh copy from Visions and use that as our starting point for 22, 23. The annualized employees, this will move all of your mid-year hires. This will move their work days. Well, actually, it moves their start and end dates to whatever the start and end dates is of the position that they're assigned to, basically annualizing them for a full year. Because if a person was hired today, you want to make sure that for the 22-23 year, you budget them for a full year. So you want their work days to be 180 or however many days you expect them to work in 22, 23. But if a good thing to do when you're creating a new year is there's going to be a lot of discrepancies where there's going to be issues in visions where positions weren't closed or just missed keys. There's going to be issues with the employees that we're going to see once you create the new year. And then this is a way of keeping them matched up so that you can easily find discrepancies. So that's up to you if you want to annualize or not. You can always, if you don't annualize now, you can choose to annualize at any point once the scenario is already created. Whenever you go to recalculate the scenario, there's a checkbox to annualize. So if you don't want to annualize right now, you don't have to. It's up to you. And then this is open the scenario after creating. This will, after the scenario creates, it will automatically close because you can see I'm already in 22, 23, but it will close whatever scenario you're in and open the new year scenario automatically for you. Okay, so once you have all those set, then go ahead and just click create. And it will take about 15 minutes. Did somebody say something?
Yes, this is Natalie from Lake Oswego School District. I have a question. I don't have annualized employees as one of my options. And then I also have clear salary plan assumptions, and I don't see that.
Okay, I think you're on the wrong box. Are you in Scenario Explorer here?
Yeah.
Okay,
Scenario
so
Explorer. Yep.
right. So right click on the scenario that you're going to create from. Go to create scenario. Did you click on?
I only have, let's see. Do I do it from the fiscal base?
You do it from whichever scenario you want to copy into your new year. So you should have an adopted scenario that you used for your adopted, or whatever has your latest assumption calculations in the scenario, because that's what's going to be copied into the new year scenario.
Okay.
Do you have that? Do you see that, Natalie?
Well, I only have 2022 modeling fiscal base. That's what I have. I don't have like.
Are you? Maybe you need to expand, or maybe you're collapsed. Maybe your tree is collapsed like that. Maybe you need to expand. You should see at least one or two scenarios, and you might only have one scenario. It's possible. You might only have one scenario if you only created one scenario for 21, 22.
Yeah, I have modeling. That's the thing that's under modeling fiscal base.
Okay.
So is that what I need to copy from?
Well, which scenario did you work in last year to create your adopted scenario?
Not sure.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, let me talk to you in a few minutes. We'll take it
Okay.
offline. And the reason why is you have all these calculations on the assumptions tab, right? You have all of your payroll calculations, and you have your supplemental pay. So if I use this scenario, it's going to copy these into the next scenario, the new year scenario for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you want to use the scenario that has your latest calculations on it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Hey, Tim, this is Rhonda.
Hi, Rhonda.
Can you just one more time say, what would be the drawback to choosing annualized employees? To me, it seems like I would want to do that.
Yeah, you would want to. The only thing it's going to do is it's going to make everybody's work days. It's going to make their work days match their position work days. But you might have some employees where they're segmented, and they will work where they work one position for part of the year and then another position for the other part of the year. But it will unfortunately, when you annualize, it will move their work days to a full work year and give you over 1.0 FTE. I would go ahead and annualize.
Yeah,
And
okay.
then, and the good thing is we do an audit during the creation and the recalc, and we can, it'll tell you anybody that's over 1.0, and it'll point out any issues that need to be looked at.
Okay, great, thanks.
Tim, who was having trouble getting the right menus?
Natalie?
Okay.
Tim, I can jump in a little bit on my experience with annualization and the reason why we choose not to.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
It's sometimes HR will create a second position because we have to pay 2 employees at the same time for a small period of time. And when we annualize, it'll take both of those, especially if they forgot to close it before we run this process. And so we end up with some double budgeted positions. And so we choose not to annualize. And then I do the audit, compare straight to HR and look for those less than full year, and then we expand them out. But we only have about 5 or 6 that hit that specific scenario each year. So it's not a lot of extra work on our part, but it prevents double budgeting a position.
Right, thank you, Tammy. And again, if you choose not to annualize, that's fine. When you recalculate the scenario, here, I'll show you. So I'm already in a new year scenario, and I click to recalculate my scenario. There's a checkbox. I'm sorry, it's not scenario. It's if you're on the employees tab and you click to recalculate the employees, you have a annualized employee. So you could do it here. And all it's going to do, I've already annualized mine, and I'll show you what it's going to do. So I'm going to take my infinite visions work days, move them to the left of my model work days. I'm going to put a delta column to the right. And you can see here's a good example. Miriam Adams in visions, she's 200, but we want her position is 213 days. So it moves her, actually what it does is it changes the date, the start and end date of the position, and we calculate the days. But realistically, it just budgets them for a full year so that her annual rate and cost are for a full year, not for just 200 days. And anybody that you do annualize will have, I know it's small, I probably should increase my font, but you'll have a little up and down green arrow, which means they were annualized. So you'll be able to tell which ones were annualized, as well as you can do a delta between these days columns. So is everybody getting the new year created? Any problems or questions? It takes, like I said, it takes a few minutes. It took mine about 35 minutes, but mine was one of the bigger ones, so that's why it took so long. And everyone should see the process log, because I had everyone turn their process log on. So whenever you save and apply, which is what is happening right now, you should see this going through all the steps. And this is the process log of my new year. These are the things that you're going to see, the type of things you're going to see at the end. We do an audit of all the employees, and we look for things such as this, where you have a position and there's no salary plan attached to it. You have people, here's a very good example of people that did not, notice that their FTE is 2.0 and the limit is 1.0. It turns out some of these people were segmented, like Tammy was describing. They worked for like 20 days in one position, and then they were moved to another position, but it annualized both of those positions, which gave them over 1.0 FTE. So these are things that will pop up that you'll need to look at in visions. Here's some vacant positions that they have FTE but no salary, and that they have no salary because they don't have a salary plan. So that's the reason there. And then there's no benefit as well. If you're not assigned, member benefit plans flow through to the employees via the salary plan. So if there's no salary plan attached, you're going to have a 0 salary and no benefit plan. And whenever you're ready to start investigating people, like, let me find some of those errors. Not really errors, just things that need to be looked into. So you can see whenever like these people have over 1.0 FTE, because they still have open positions, 2 open positions. You can always right click on their name and click Infinite Vision Details, and it'll do a live look into visions. You see he's got 2 positions, went from 1st grade to 5th grade. But that's one of the things to look at is the start and end dates. So he started one of them on November 15th. No, wait, August 30th and went to November 14th. Then on the 15th, he started a new position. So the thing to investigate is that going to be the way it is next year? If it is, we need to segment this employee where we have him as one position only working these days, these dates, and then another position working these dates. Right now, they've come in as just 2 separate full positions. So that's something that you have to investigate and talk with HR to see, is it going to be like this, or maybe they just forget to close his old position? We don't have a lot of segmented employees that I've seen. I'm sure it happens, but for some reason, I don't see very many. So it must not be a very common thing. On the financials, Scott, are you getting Natalie scored away?
Not quite.
Do you need her to start TeamViewer, or?
Yeah, I need to get a phone number.
Natalie, could you tell us your phone number real quick?
It's 503-534-2477.
Okay, hold on. 534-2477.
Yep.
534-2477. Yep.
Okay, I'll give her a call.
All right. So on this New Year creation, we downloaded the working from Visions, and then the working gets copied into the model. Now, the difference is going to be, of course, the salary counts will not be identical, because all of the model, well, the model and the Visions columns, they're calculated on the Employees tab and rolled into the Employees tab based on all of the calculations on the assumptions. Plus, especially if you've annualized. The FTE should be fairly close to between the model and Visions. Could be a little wiggle room, but it should be fairly close. But you can see I got the working column here, the model amount column here. I want to do a delta between these 2 columns, or yeah, between these, but I want on the right. So if I scroll down, everything like 240-ish and above, they're identical. It's like we have a dollar rounding probably issue here. But these just got copied into the model. Let's just find 100. Because that's going to be your starting point for next year. Any questions so far? Is everybody's New Year creating? It might still be going. It does take a few minutes.
I'm just finished.
Okay. That was Christina, right?
Actually, I fib. It's still going.
Oh. We have a little bell that goes off when ESP is finished doing something, but it doesn't come through on Citrix. They block the audio for some reason, so you might not get it. That's another reason why we suggest having this process log open, because for one thing, there'll be a timer. I don't have it here because it's already finished, but there'll be a timer that's ticking up that you can follow, and you'll see the log actually scrolling as well to let you know it's still doing something. If you want to delete, if you create this scenario and if you want to delete it for some reason, maybe you created it from the wrong parent. To delete a scenario, you right click on it, select delete, and you have to type in the exact name, and we put it there for you right there, 2022/23:1- because we want you to have to manually type that so that you're certain you want to delete it. We have had a couple of customers that have accidentally deleted scenarios that they didn't mean to. So we make it a little hard to delete. And then you can right click and recreate the scenario. When it is created, you should see it pop up into a new fiscal year, a new hive. It's called a hive in the tree for 22/23. And we call it the fiscal base. You can change that label if you want. We suggest just leaving it fiscal base. And this is the scenario that all future scenarios will be based on in this year. So this is the scenario that you really want to go in, and people will do it differently, but you want to go in and put all of your knowns, any changes that you can think of into this scenario. Some districts use one scenario and they use it to do their stepping and COLAs and pretty much everything in one scenario. Some people, they get all of the assumption calculations working right, all of the supplemental pay working right, but then before they start doing changes to the budget or moving employees or stepping and COLAs, they just preserve this and then create a new scenario to start working in that. I think that's probably, I would think, the better way to do it. Preserve your fiscal base, because that way you know it's fairly clean. You won't have to back anything out. You know, you can just make another scenario. If you make a new scenario and you make changes and you realize you don't want those changes, then all you got to do is delete that scenario or leave it and then just create another one from your fiscal base. So that way you're preserving a good scenario. And to create a new scenario from any scenario, you just right click, create scenario, and do a scenario model. And I'm going to go ahead and do that so we can see what it looks like. You're giving a couple of options here. You can give it a label. Like we might, like, let's say you got everything ready and you're ready to start stepping. You might want to call this one stepping and COLAs. And you got to always put in a comment, creating new model. If you need to recalculate the scenario, you could check that. Since I don't have a green flag up here, this will always be your scenario recalc status. If you have a red flag, that means you've done something in the scenario that will cause your numbers on the financials to change. But in ESP, every time you make a change and save, it doesn't just automatically update all of the numbers everywhere that it needs to. It only does that when you recalculate the scenario, because it takes a little bit of time to do all the calculations. So if you make a change that affects your values, but don't recalculate, your flag is red. So anytime you're going to run a report or you're going to look at your numbers on the financials, you need to make sure that you've recalculated the scenario. Even if you're going to build a new scenario, it's best to recalculate before copying, so that it's going to copy a calculated scenario. And then you can choose to open it. I'm going to choose not to open it just yet. And click copy. And all it does is make an exact duplicate of this number one scenario. Nothing is changed in it. How's everybody's new year? Okay, good.
My new year is going great. Really busy though.
Oh, okay. Well, I meant your new year scenario, but I'm glad your new year is going well too.
Oh, my new year is finally all done.
Okay, good. So it should have opened for everyone. Is there anybody not finished yet, still running? Okay. So I would imagine all of you that have already have it created, you will have gotten these action reports that we talked about earlier, about telling you about employees, no salary, over 1.0 FTE, no benefit plan. There's quite a few other audits that run too that might show up. And most of the time, these are just issues that are envisions that were positions that weren't closed, or somebody keyed in the wrong number, just something that doesn't align properly. Does anybody have any questions about any of those? Because there's quite a few different ones. There might be some you don't understand what they are yet. If you might have one of the audits we do, I see quite often is you might have somebody keyed to, they're not keyed to the right object group. Instead of, somebody mistyped in the wrong object group. It's not a salary account. That's a warning that we do. Sometimes you'll see like 0130 overtime. You might see someone gets keyed to 0130. If that were the case, ESP would tell you about it, because we know that's not normally a FTE account. You might see some of those. And having that right click and infinite vision details is really nice when you're doing this, going through validating your employees, because you can just do a quick look in visions to see what the problem is. Rhonda, are you doing SIO and Santiam?
I am not doing SIO this year. So just Santiam, and then I have another district. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And if everyone notices while we're sitting here looking at Scenario Explorer, mine is a test database. It doesn't update, but so this is where your daily snapshot comes in. Remember, every night we go and we copy your actuals and we reload the employees into the Infinite Visions, the purple Infinite Visions daily columns. So you should see this every time you open Scenario Explorer. It should be the current date. And this district that I'm on is, for this demo, is quite large. This probably won't take as long for most of all of you others, just to create a modeling scenario. So speaking about the actuals, on the employees tab, by default, you only have your blue infinite visions. Now, these, since I created this scenario today, New Year scenario today, this was as of, this is reflective as of, if you look down here, January 11th, 9:50 a.m. That's when the employees were loaded from Infinite Visions into the blue columns, because we created a New Year scenario. It then copied it from here into the blue, the green. But tonight, the daily is going to run, and let's say a new employee has been added as of late lunchtime, right? That new employee would not be here in my grid, because when I loaded the employees into ESP, that employee did not exist yet. However, tomorrow, that employee will exist. And when I open ESP, their name will appear over here in the left, but it'll be grayed out. The model numbers will be empty. The blue infinite vision columns will be empty. And you'll think, that's weird. Why is that? Well, that's because they came in on the daily. And by default, we don't have the purple daily columns showing. So if you go right click, you go to this, the daily data set, you could click on add common. Add common will be like work hours, FTE, work days, things that match the other columns in the other data sets. You'll notice that they won't have model, they won't have blue, but they will have purple, because that's the only place they exist in ESP is in the daily. And then you'll have to decide, okay, wait a minute, do I need to bring this person in? Is this a new position? You know, why weren't, maybe this, and it could be that maybe a budgeted position was filled or a vacant position was filled. So you would need to determine why that person is coming in now. Did they fill a position? Is this a new position? Because you'll be able to then right click and say copy from Infinite Visions daily. It would then copy all of their information into the model. And that's how you would, they would be active. They wouldn't be grayed out anymore. And that's how you would get new people, new hires into the model. Their blue columns would still stay empty, because remember, once you reload the scenario or the employees as of this date, January 11th, 9:50, this is static until you go to tools, employees, reload employees. When you do tools, employees, reload employees, that reloads the employees into the blue Infinite Visions columns. So it's like the purple is a daily snapshot. The blue is a snapshot of when you tell it to take a snapshot. I hope that makes sense. So Rhonda, for example, what would you do if you open this scenario and there's 2 or 3 grayed out employees that came in on the daily? How would you?
If there were two or three employees that were grayed out?
Yeah,
came in
they came in on the daily, but they weren't in your model. And, like you're like 2 months or 6 weeks away from creating your budget.
Oh, I don't usually go and do what you did as upload through the daily. I just reload my employees.
Well, yeah, that works too, but they would be there regardless on the daily.
Right. But
So
I need to make sure that they're active in my model. So I have to load them from,
No.
I have to reload them.
No,
No?
no. That's what I was saying. If they come in the daily, you can bring them into the model. You don't have to reload.
Oh, right. Through what you just showed us.
Right click,
Yes.
copy from,
Yep.
and that's individual if you want to do it individually. Copy funding from Infinite Visions daily.
Right. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. But how would you know? I mean, like, do you get surprised like that? Like, oh, there's a new employee. Does that happen often? Or
No, I see what you're saying. Not so much at that point in the game. I don't experience a lot of new hires at that point in the game or new people coming in.
Yeah.
But the last couple years I did, last year I did. So I had to bring them in. I didn't know about the bringing them in from the daily though, individually.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I've had this conversation with Scott before. I'm like, well, why do you even need the blue?
Mhm.
Because this is being updated every day. So,
Right.
um,
Because the blue is static. It only takes the picture when you actually do the action, right?
right. When you tell it
Yeah.
to, based on this
Mhm.
date right here, that's the little down arrow, which means download it.
Right.
And when you put the cursor there, you should see infinite vision. So I reloaded the employees January 11th at 9:50. And then y'all's actuals should say, well, 1:11 and then sometime in the middle of the night. Mine hasn't updated, but y'all should update. And then tomorrow, your actuals will say 1:12. And then if a new employee was added right now, they would not be in ESP, but tomorrow morning they will be.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't have to reload to get that. You can just rely on the daily. And Scott, are you there, Scott? I must not be. I was going
Yeah,
to
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
I was
here.
just going to ask you on the daily, we pull in all of the information such as plan code and everything would be on a regular reload, right?
Correct. And this is actually a topic Tim and I at Oregon Trail talked about. It really isn't an actuals. It's just a snapshot. It's a daily snapshot, even though it's in the actuals column, because you're still going to get the full salaries. You're still going to get the full calculated year. However, it is on the list to make the daily actuals actually collect and load the actual values or year-to-date values for all of your pay items so that they can actually become a true year-to-date actuals. And that could change the discussion about why do we have the blue columns.
Right. Right. It's the blue is kind of like a newspaper. It becomes old news real fast.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying the blue is like a newspaper. It's old news real fast.
Yes. Yeah. As soon as you technically, because in the larger the district, the more you see it. As HR and people churn in payroll and move, the blue columns are technically stale as soon as you load them.
All right. They freeze as soon as you load them. Yeah. And the daily does too, actually, because it freezes as of whatever the date and time it was loaded. But it does update itself on a daily 24-hour basis. But if HR just hired 2 new people and put them in visions, you can always go to tools, employees, reload employees. So I'm going to click on that. And this is something that you guys will probably have to do over the next couple of weeks as you're going through all of your employees and making sure that everything is coded correctly, because you might be finding problems right now that need to be fixed in visions, positions that need to be closed or dates that need to be changed, just a myriad of things. And as they're fixed in visions, you'll want to come into ESP and then reload your employees and bring them back into the blue columns. And then another option on the reload is copy to the model. This will automatically go back to visions, reload the employees, and then automatically just copy them into the model for you. So it's almost like creating the new year scenario over again. Because it's going to visions, getting everything new, copying it back into the model. So you're basically refreshing your employees. And then you have that annualized option here again that you would probably need to check. Does everybody see how to reload the employees? But just remember, whenever you do any sort of copy to model, that you are overriding your model. So at some point when you start working in here and stepping people, well, stepping wouldn't matter, but if you start moving people or changing their work hours or work days, or you start working in the model, when you do copy, you will be overriding your model. So that's something to be, as of right now, it's fine because you're trying to get your base into a good spot. So it's okay to override because you haven't done any work. Okay, I'll be back in 2 minutes. Okay. Scott, how's Natalie doing?
I think she's running. Natalie, are you running okay?
Yeah, I think so. I think it just finished.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so my scenario finished. My modeling scenario. So notice that how when you create a scenario, it will be nested under the parent. If I were to make, let's say, this is great and all, I did the stepping in colas, but now what if, we close a school? You have to ask yourself, do you want to create this scenario that has the stepping in cola, or do you want to go back and create it before the stepping in cola? Because you could, if I did the stepping in cola in this scenario and then used it to create a new scenario, the new scenario would have the stepping in colas in it. If I went back to this scenario and created a new model, it would not have the stepping in colas. So the more scenarios you create, you got to really think things through about what has been done in each scenario and try to keep track of what's been done. Any questions about Scenario Explorer or creating scenarios? If I did this and I didn't want it, again, you could right click, delete scenario. We have reference scenarios. If you want to create reference scenarios, these are scenarios where it creates 3 scenarios. One scenario, all it does is it's a copy of the fiscal base, and it just adds a 1% COLA to all the employees. And then there's a scenario that does 1 step and then 1 additional day. And let me open one of these just to show you how you would use that. And the way to create that is right click, create reference scenarios. But let me open one just to show you guys what it is in case you want to create one. I can also describe what a baseline is. Any questions about the new? I know that our main focus is the New Year scenario, so I want to make sure we stay focused on your New Year scenarios, because basically your homework right now is to go through the employees and make sure what you're seeing on your employees tab is what you expect to see. The FTE matches, all the dollar matches seems to align with what you expect. The same on the financials tab. And then to start thinking about all the assumption calculations. Do we need to change FICA? Do we need to change medical benefits? Any new supplemental pay? We'll go over those in a little while. Oh, another thing is, don't forget you can, something that will come in handy while you're doing this is the save to spreadsheet. Let me see if I can bring up my process log. I'll show you. Let me show you when this opens up. You can run those audits again manually if you need to. So I'm going to do that just a second. So let's pretend I'm still in my New Year scenario and I want to see those audits again. And those audits are the over 1 FTE, miscoded accounts, anything that's potentially something wrong with the scenario. You go to, on the employees tab, you go to tools, employees, audit employees. Scott, it is opening up correctly now, by the way, the windows. And then I would say always include all validations, and you could even run the audit on the Infinite Vision set if you wanted to. I'm not going to. And then just click validate. The process log didn't know. And it's going to go through and run a validation on the employees. I'm in a different scenario now, so I have a different result. Anytime there are action items or notes, you'll get a little pop-up. And I know it gets annoying, but it's just our way of showing you that something needs to be addressed. So in this scenario, in this scenario, I've got some employees that missing the salary plan. They're no FTE, and some positions that don't have a salary plan. So one thing that you're going to want to do, because you might want to save this, is save to spreadsheet, this toolbar icon right here. Because once you close this and do other things, it can be hard to get back to unless you run the validation again. You can see it is pretty quick though, but you might want to just save this to a spreadsheet so that you have it separately outside of ESP, because it could be a chance you might need to email it over to HR for them to investigate what's going on with some certain employees. So basically, it's just a copy to Excel, and then you can do with it what you want to do. And any grid or window in ESP has the save to spreadsheet. So anytime you see something, a good example is if you're investigating an employee, you right-click Infinite Vision Details, and you realize a position hasn't been closed, you could do the save to spreadsheet right here so that you could email that to HR. You might want to clean it up before you do, but whatever. Anyway, it's just a way to get information out. Any questions so far about employees? Okay, so I wanted to show you guys what this reference scenario does. This one's called the 1% COLA. So I'm going to look at the salary plan tab. And just remember, I'm not in my new year anymore. I'm looking back at last year's. So notice that what ESP did for this reference scenario, all it did was just put a 1% COLA for everybody. And then it created what was called, it created it in the base, the first scenario. Scott, does it create a baseline in the fiscal base?
Yes, it copies or saves the baseline from the fiscal base, so
But
you can compare it.
Right. Okay. So it does create an actual baseline in the first scenario. Okay. So a baseline is it's a fourth data set. Notice that we have the green model data set, we have the Infinite Visions, which is the blue columns data set, we have the purple Infinite Visions daily, and this is empty because this is a demo database, so that's why mine are empty. And then you have this fourth fiscal base, and what this is a copy of the model from the fiscal base scenario. So I'm going to add the annual rate column. It'll make sense here in just a second. So this is the annual rate from that number one fiscal base scenario. And we know that it did not have a 1% COLA in it. That was the whole purpose of this scenario, was to just take a copy of number one, make a new scenario, and then just give everybody a 1% COLA. And the way that you'll be able to see the dollar difference is to show this yellow baseline column at a delta column. Actually, I should have put it on the other side because the rates went up. If you, was it control click or shift click? I always forget how to hide. What is it, Scott? To hide a column?
Control double click or right click hide.
Oh, okay. Actually, I don't want to. When I moved the column, it automatically updated the delta column.
Correct. Well, if you just switch from side to side, which side it's on, it'll automatically update it.
That must be new. Okay, so I
Nope,
switched.
actually, no, it's actually been there a long time.
Oh, well, okay.
Tim, the other thing, the reason your Infinite Visions daily columns are empty is probably on Scenario Explorer. I don't automatically check the flag to update actuals
That's right. Good point.
on the reference scenarios.
So if you ever see any empty daily or actuals, first thing to do is check. There should be a column here in Scenario Explorer called daily update. Daily update right here.
Yeah,
By
you see-
default, they are checked, but for the reference scenarios, we don't update them. Right. Because it does take some processing power. The way it works behind the scenes is it reloads into this scenario, and then it copies them. It copies the data into every scenario that has these checked. So we don't want to waste processing time or power to update scenarios that really don't need their actuals updated. So anyway, if you ever see empty, be sure, and you want to see them, make sure this is checked. By default, you can see in the new year here, they are checked. But for reference scenarios, they won't be checked. Does that make sense? Any questions? Okay, so I'm in this reference scenario. It has a 1% COLA that ESP did automatically. The yellow is the annual rate from the fiscal base scenario. So it carried forward the baseline, the yellow column, into the second scenario, which gives you the ability to compare. So this was basically, you could call it pre-COLA, and then this is the post-COLA, and this is the dollar value. So this would be just the annual rate increase. If you wanted to see the entire increase, which would include all the fixed cost, you would want to compare your cost total. So I go to the baseline, fiscal base, cost total. Because the cost total, everyone, I did email you, you should have a document that explains how these columns are laid out and where these values come from. We'll be going over these in the January 24th training in more detail about how these values are built, basically from left to right. the cost total being the final cost. So now if I add a delta column, it would be the annual rate difference plus any of the fixed cost differences, which are, if you put the mouse cursor in there, FICA, Social Security, PERS, because those will all, of course, increase as well since their annual rate increased. So this employee has $733 just annual rate increase, but the cost to the district is $959 total, a 1% COLA for that employee. A good way to see the complete cost to the district is to go to the financials tab now. You have the same baseline columns here. So right click, I want to compare the amount column of the first scenario and then now the amount column of this scenario, because I know this scenario has a 1% in it. So I'm going to right click, go to the fiscal base, click amount, scroll back up, do a delta between these two. So 1% COLA for this district would cost over all funds $934,148 would be the entire charge to the district, cost to the district. So that's what the reference scenarios do for you. And the good thing is, let's say, well, we don't want to do 1%, we want to do 2%. All you would have to do is you don't have to create a new scenario. All you would have to do is go to the salary plans and change the 1 to a 2. And one thing that's important to know is the way ESP works. When you put this 1% in here and save it, it doesn't bake it in. You know, it's not a done deal. You could erase it. I could take this, delete it, change it back to 0, and it would take everybody back to their pre-COLA rates. ESP, the way ESP works is you put in all these calculations, but when you recalculate the scenario, it takes everything back to the way it came in from visions and then rebuilds it. It re-adds the COLAs, it re-adds the steps, it redoes all of the calculations from the assumptions tab. And that it adds a little bit more back to the back end, but it makes making changes easier because you only have to change, you can change things more than once. You could change this to a 2%, and it would take it back to 0% and then add the 2%. So once you put this in here and save it, it stays here until you change it or delete it. And every time you recalculate, it takes the employees back to 0% and then adds the 1%. The same for the stepping. If you step somebody, when you recalculate, it takes them back to the previous step and then re-adds the step each time. So when you check the box, you have to leave it checked. So any questions about, we kind of covered, I know we covered a lot there about the reference scenarios and then how to use the baseline, because you need the baseline from the fiscal base scenario because you want it as a reference, right? Because you want to compare scenario 2 to scenario 1. Okay. No questions, I'm going to assume we're good. So if you wanted to create your reference scenarios, you go to right click, create reference scenarios, and then you can choose which ones you want to create. The 1 step, the 1 COLA, the 1 workday. What is the clear salary plan assumption? That clears the COLAs and the steps? Oh, that's if you've made any adjustments to the salary plan tab already, and you want to clear those before it makes the reference scenarios. So anyway, we built that reference scenarios. We thought it would be a help to people if you want to use it. well, you know, it's really great in negotiations, right? Because you can so quickly change COLAs and recalculate and see what the, you know, what the cost is going to be. So how's everybody's new year looking? Any questions? Is everybody looking the employees over? I'm going to switch back to my new year. Be sure and look at your salary plan tab. Initially, you might have to reset your scope. We noticed that the first time you open it, it shows even all of the inactive salary plans. And I'll show you how to do that just a second. Scott, are you there by chance? So the salary plan tab.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to show you on the benefit plans. It looks like it was pulling in the key. Oh, now it's there. Okay, never mind. It did have just numbers here earlier.
Okay.
I'm not sure what had happened, but now it seems to be fine.
Were you holding your tongue in the left cheek or the right cheek? when you
Neither
click
one.
that?
Neither
Oh,
one.
okay.
That was
Well,
the problem.
You have to hold it on the roof of your mouth if you
Oh,
want it, right?
No, okay.
Sorry about that.
Anyway, so you guys might see a bunch of grayed out ones, which we pull those in from visions. And to get rid of those or to hide those, you have a scope filter. Scott, another thing, sorry. I have noticed that a lot of my windows are opening up at the top. Does that happen to anybody else?
And not in the center?
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's happened quite a few times where it's opening up.
That could be that code we just fixed. I'll have to
Mine
check.
opens in the center.
Oh,
It could be
So-
that your wonky wide screen that's driving this monitor's logic.
right.
So I'll check that.
Yeah, I recommend you guys get a widescreen monitor. They are great for ESP, for spreadsheets, because you really get a lot of width in your screen. I really love it. So for your salary plan, I would check the active flag. I think by default that's not checked, and you might see a bunch of inactive garbage that you want to hide. And then click OK. So I don't want to get into a lot of how to do things right now, because we need, like what happened in the morning session was talking about special cases that you guys are discovering with your employees. Any questions? Do you have any employees wondering why they're showing a certain way after a new year creation? From what I've seen, almost every district, when they create the new year, they're going to get a lot of those actions, notes, warnings type things. Just because you know, you're bringing employees, it's a new year, and the audit will show a lot of issues, miscodings, and visions. So just a reminder, you know, I have all of these columns that I don't really want showing here anymore. I'm going to reset my layout. This toolbar button right here, it'll get rid of, it'll put it back in the default column order. When it comes to looking at the employees, you know, for validations, I like just one list alphabetically, not broken out by object or center or anything. You guys might like it. And the way to do that is open your scope form and just sum everything. There it is, opening at the top. If you just sum to the top here, you'll get just a long list of everybody alphabetically. And then that way, earlier I was able to sort on the salary FTE total. Click on it, sort descending, and it moved all of my 2.0s or anything over 1.0, it moved everybody to the top. I was easily able to see them. Another thing that it does when you have it in this order alphabetically, well, not now because I'm sorted differently, but let's say you come to an employee, like here we go, Charles Barker. Right, I'm not sorted alphabetically anymore. I'm sorted. You can always look for the red arrow. I'm sorted on this column. So, but notice he has that red and blue icon. Let me see if I can, let me make my grids bigger. Font's bigger, I meant grid font. It's probably kind of small for everyone. I don't think it makes the icons bigger though. He has a red and blue icon next to his name. That means he has at least one more funding somewhere in either in this grid, or he could be, well, I mean, when I have everybody open, he would have to be in this grid. But when they have a red and blue, that means they have at least another funding. And a quick way to see all of one employee's fundings is to right click, which I'll do as soon as it finishes refreshing. Right click and then click show all. So I want to see all of Barker's fundings. Right click and then the third option, show all Barker. Basically, you can see what it does is it puts his ID, employee ID, in the scope, and it's just going to return all of his fundings, all the fundings that have that ID. So there's the name, and then here's his two fundings. So he had one regular funding, 8-hour workday, and then he has supplemental pay. Looks like it's not configured correctly. Probably not set up on the assumptions tab yet, because he's got a plan code and visions with some dollars in it. So that would be somebody that we'd have to dig into to see where this pay is coming from in visions, and why aren't we calculating it over here in the model.
Tim, I have a question. This is Rhonda.
Go ahead.
So on back on the employees, when we set up our New Year scenario, and I think I talked about this with you last year. How do we bring the budgeted positions back in? Budgeted positions from our models last year. Uh-oh, you're laughing.
Isn't there don't we have the option for
I
copy
thought
the
that-
models in the New Year's scenario creation?
Yeah, there's an option to preserve the budgeted position.
Did I miss that when I created it?
Yeah, let me show you, Rhonda. So
I remember that last year, Ron.
yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Right click, create scenario, New Year scenario. One of the check boxes, and it's probably because of what happened to you last year, there's a keep model, budgeted, and vacant positions.
Oh, I forgot to check that. Okay.
So what I would do if I were you is just go ahead and delete your scenario, right, Scott? That'd be the quickest way.
Yes, yep,
Yeah,
and then recreate it.
and
Okay,
then
great.
recreate it,
Thank you.
and that should. But remember, that's going to move all of them too. So there might be some that you don't want to move. You'll have to.
Now, Rhonda, are they in the Blue Infinite Visions? No, because these are the
No, the
actual models.
vacancies,
Yeah, they
vacancies
wouldn't.
would come over, but not my budgeted
Correct.
positions, but I
Right.
do use those budgeted positions year after year.
Right. Yep. That's your. There are features that I give our clients names. That's the Rhonda option right there. So that's why I started giggling when you asked.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
It's weird. My first thought was Walmart, because I was in Walmart when you sent the email. So as soon as you said that, Walmart came to my head. That's weird how that
Uh-oh.
works. Yeah. All
I'm
right.
associated with Walmart. I
You're
don't know how I
associated with
feel about
Walmart now.
that.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
So any questions? Did everyone follow that? So she had some budgeted, I think just budgeted positions in her adopted that do not live in visions, and she wants to bring them into the new year. So she would check the keep model, budgeted, and vacant positions it would be, so the only we call them employees, the only positions that it would keep would be those model and budgeted, those budgeted and vacant positions. And then it would still reload the employees and copy the employees into the model. But it wouldn't, so she would have all of her Infinite Vision employees plus the budgeted and vacant positions that she brought from this scenario. Yeah, I think you might be the only one that I know of that does that, but that's good.
Lincoln County probably will too.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yay, Kim.
Yeah. All right, guys, any questions? We're making great time. Let's see. So did everybody follow the right click show all? I want to show you how to get out of that once you've done it. So I right click, show all. Here's my employee. To get out of that and get back to the scope I was just in, you click this red reset button right here. And that'll clear the ID. Another thing you might need while you're looking for employees is there's 2 ways to find an employee that you don't see in the grid, especially if you have a lot like this. If you look down here, there's these numbers. This number right here means how many records there are in this current scope. So since I'm full scope, this would be every funding that's available right now. There's 1,767 complete records from our rows from top to bottom. This number is the number that you're currently on. Like I'm on row 1,628. So that's not really that informative, but this one tells you how many records there are. But let's say, so you might not want, and especially when you're not sorted alphabetically, it can be hard to find an employee. So let's say I'm looking for, I know there's an employee, let's see if there's an employee named Smith. So if you know the employee is in the grid, and I know that if there's an employee, they would have to be because I'm full scope, I could just do Control F for find, just like in any Word document, or this toolbar icon right here, search for values in the grid. You click on that, this little grip, this little box pops up, and you just start typing. And as you're typing, it starts looking for what you're typing. So I just typed in Smith, and it found the first Smith. And if you wanted to look for like a certain number, you could select grid and like search for a number. If you were looking for like a certain rate or something that somebody might have, you could do that. So Control F is searching the grid for an employee or a number that's already in the grid. But if you might be in a limited scope and you want to find an employee, you have this stronger search function, find employee. You click there, it's called find employee in the database. Click on that, and it's very similar, but you can search by name, ID, and some other stuff that you might use. And what it does, I'm going to type in Smith, but this one you type in the full name or as much of it as you can, and then use a wildcard if you need it. So this will find Smith with anything to the left or right of it. But what this does is it ignores the scope, and it just rebuilds the grid with anybody that matches my search. So quite a few Smiths. So if you know the employees in the grid, you can just use the Control F to find them. If you're not sure, then use the find in the database, and that will reset your, notice it does sort of like the ID earlier. It just, in your scope bar, it says, give me anybody with Smith in their name. And to get out of it the same way, you just click the clear context. Another feature you guys might use is when you're doing the right click infinite vision details. Once you have the window open, you can't, Scott, does this key only on ID, or could you type names in here?
You can type name or position number too. It should be pretty flexible. It's going to try and find anything that kind of matches.
Right. So once you right click and you have this window open, you can start, just use this search window. Let's see if it does names. Because initially it uses, no, it doesn't look like it. Looks like it just does ID, I think.
Well, you have to put a wild card in there.
Oh.
Put a Smith asterisk or no. Yeah, okay, that works. Yeah, otherwise it's going to look for something with just
Smith, right? Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right, so that does work. My apologies. So anybody with the name Smith. So once you have this open, if you know the information, you can just, you don't have to close and reopen. You can just, and this is a live look in Visions. This is not, you're not in ESP anymore. So even if there was an employee that was not in ESP, you could use this. If they're in Visions but not in ESP yet, you could use that. And this is really helpful when you're looking at supplemental pay as well, when you want to see what supplemental pay an employee should be getting. So most of your work is going to be here on the getting the employees. Gosh dang. Getting the employees squared away, because this is where most of your work, most of your dollars will be coming from. And we won't talk about today moving or any of that stuff with the employees. But like I said, your homework right now is just making sure that all of the employees you expect to see are here. Your FTE seems right. These people that are over 1 FTE or the people that don't have a plan code, figuring out what happened to them and getting them squared away. And I guess you have the choice of either, if you find the problem, fix it in ESP, or I would think ideally you would fix it in Visions, have as many fixes as you can done, and then reload the employees. Reload the employees into Visions, the blue column, and then copy them into the model, rather than making the changes. Because once you start making changes, you're kind of limiting yourself. You can't really do a full copy anymore, because you'll overwrite any of your changes. Unless you just do, you can always do, let's say you have just a group, you can set your scope up. Like I don't know, function 110, is that legitimate? You can just copy by scope as well. So if you wanted to just copy people that are function 1110, of course, there's nobody there. So this is what it looks like. It's kind of weird at first when you see it. I put in a function that doesn't have employees, and this is what it's going to say. So just, if you ever get this, the first thing to do is check your scope. And you're probably not like me and you know these numbers better than I do.
Tim, when you say it overwrites your model, it only overwrites the employee elements of your model. If you had put fixed and calculated amounts in your financials, it wouldn't overwrite those, would it?
No, sir. No.
Okay.
But that does bring up a good point. Hopefully you're not, I'm going to go to the financials here. Hopefully you're not overwriting these values too often, because these salary values, the fixed cost values. Now these 122, 121 substitutes and stuff that you will be budgeting here on the financials. But all of the other ones, the FTE accounts and the supplemental, hopefully you are configuring that on the employees tab or the assumptions tab so that it's rolling in correctly. Because once you start overriding on the, you can override this, sure. But once you start overriding, then, you know, you really start muddying the waters because you're calculating values, but then you're saying, well, I know we're calculating a value, but now I want to override the value. So we suggest try, if it's a salary that you need to override that's coming from the employees, fix it on the employees and let it roll over into the financials correctly. And then when it comes down to time to print the budget, then if you need to add $100,000, you can do that. It's just however you want to work. But you know, the employees are there so that hopefully they roll over the right numbers. And if there's a problem, just fix it on the employees and let ESP do the work and roll over.
Tim,
Yes.
when I'm looking at my blue columns, the budget that's showing there is my 2021.
Working?
Adopted
Adopted.
and
Okay.
working.
And you are in a
And
new year scenario, 22, 23?
yes, I'm in my 22, 23 modeling, and my actuals columns are 2021, 19, 20, and 18, 19.
Well, we just created this, so the daily hasn't run yet.
Oh. Yeah.
No, let me see.
But
just-
the working
that
should
makes
be,
sense.
It's a year, everything's a year behind.
even your adopted and working are.
Yes.
I thought Carol checked that a while ago. You know what? It's so weird you say that because Carol said that exact same thing, and then she said, "Oh, never mind. I realized what happened."
Hmm.
So
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know.
So, okay, Kim, I'll check that and I'll offline and
Because it should be 21, 22, correct? The blue column.
Yes.
well, yeah, and it should have been 21, 22 in the source column also. In the source scenario we created it from. I'll check on that.
Okay.
All right.
So that brings up a good point. If let's say we figure out that she selected the wrong column on New Year creation, just like on the employees, you can reload your working and adopt it. You go to tools while you're on the financials tab, go to tools, financials, reload adopted working budgets. And this should look familiar to everyone. You have to pick, we went over this yesterday. You have to pick the columns that you want to reload. So, sorry, Kim, if you do that, can you tell us, do you have the correct, are you seeing what you expect to see as far as the adopted source and operating source?
So let me look.
So if you go and you make changes to the working or adopted and you need to reload, you just tools, reload budgets. Scott, we don't have a copy to model here.
Say again.
We don't have a copy to model like we do on the employees, where you reload and they can just tell it to go ahead and copy.
No.
Okay.
So mine says, well, it looks the same as that one. Infinite Visions database is Lincoln FY 2021. And I think that should be 2022, shouldn't it?
I don't think so because we're still in the 21, 22. It depends on how you name your, because these are manually entered, these names.
Well, but look at this one, Tim. You've got 2021 in your adopted and 21, 22. So
Yeah.
They need to both be the current year.
Yeah, it looks like they're a year behind.
Right.
So where do you go to set that initially?
Right there. When you reload. If you select the
But I
default,
created it. Well, I didn't create it. Carol did, so maybe she didn't use the right
she probably just
budget
didn't
from
notice.
last year.
She probably didn't notice that they were wrong. And if you select the default, it should figure out where it needs to load from.
But I mean, when she created the scenario, she must have picked the wrong
I'm guessing
the
she
wrong
didn't.
scenario.
I'm guessing she didn't pick anything. Oh, you mean that she created it from? Yeah.
Yeah, the one she created it from.
Yeah.
It
And
should
she
have been
probably didn't notice that those were set to the prior year when she created it. You can just reload it and it will update and then copy it to the model instead of recreating the new year.
It will copy it to the model, just the reload?
No, I said, and then copy.
Oh,
it
and then
to the
copy,
model.
right. So I'm wondering why, when I open this form up, it's going to 2021.
It's just old. It's just old data because we've added all of these functions to set that.
Right.
Mine did the same thing though.
Right. So once you set it, long as you have the set default columns, it should remember everything.
Right.
So
And then
click that,
remember,
Tim.
the one with the asterisk is the one that it defaults. And as long as this is checked, set default columns, but I need to set this too. So it looks like I don't know where it got the adopted from. That might be an old adopted. Here, I want the working scenario from fiscal year 21.
I would leave the defaults there.
Yeah.
Unless you know that you're using budget columns, I would leave those at the default.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and reload mine. So in this case, if I'm not 100% sure that my working is right, because that's what got copied into, I would reload, and then I'll show you everyone how to copy from. It's just like on the employees, you're going to copy from your blue into the green.
Okay, but if we haven't made any changes in our scenario, we could just delete it and start over like
Yes.
you told Rhonda to do, right? Okay.
You can,
Correct.
yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm having my process log show up on the other screen though, Scott.
I need to check that. I did the options form windows.
Oh, okay.
But I need to go look at the set parent window or center window on that.
What I was trying to get to earlier was I'm on the, let me see. When the ESP is doing something, we limit how much you can do in the grid. I think I can still change, okay, still change tabs, but we don't advise doing too much while ESP is cooking. While it's cooking, you should have a banner when it's doing something. You can also look in the bottom left. We call this the status line. It should be, and it matches with whatever you see in the process log here. Insert new budget data, insert new budget data. And as this scrolls, it'll update here as well. And you'll see this timer will be moving. And you have the same timer here. Well, it's actually a couple of seconds different. But anyway, that's just to let you know ESP is still doing something. But what I wanted to show everyone was if you limit your scope, you can say copy just the scope. So let's say you've done work, I did work in another function. I want to preserve that, but I know all of these 1111 employees, I do want to copy into the model. You could go to tools. It must be because it's doing something right now. I'm not getting my menu.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah. Because this will be a long list of options, and I think it's because it's busy doing something right now. We'll check it, let it finish, and then we'll check it. But anyway, it'll say copy employees in scope. So you can limit just your scope and copy those employees into the model. And it won't affect any employees or fundings outside of the scope. So it doesn't have to be all or none. And then of course, there's always the right click, which we talked about earlier. And again, oh, here we go. Copy fundings from Infinite Visions, which means blue columns are the daily, which is the purple columns. That'll do just an individual employee. And you can select quite a few and do those as well. It'll do those 6 or 7 employees. So we give you a few different ways to copy into the model. But just remember, you are overriding your model. I thought the reload would be quicker, but this database is big. Can we do a print to PDF? I wonder.
No.
I know I can't. No? Okay.
Well, if you have a PDF driver, I suppose you could.
Right, but I was thinking about the people on Citrix, or the cloud, if they would be able to. I don't know if
We don't
that-
have a PDF driver. I don't think, although that would be I don't know if the Windows Server environment will create that as a default printer. Something to look into.
Yeah, I know on my Windows, on my personal Windows, it seems like it's always just there, without having to install it.
Yeah.
Like it's a default now.
There is a Microsoft Print to PDF driver.
On the app server.
Yeah, it looks like it. But then it has to use the TS client.
You guys should get this magnifying glass. It's so cool. I really like it. When you're looking for some small things, it really helps. So I'm going to switch to, well, oh wait, I want to get too far ahead. Cynthia, let's see. Let me find the name of it. I think it's called Windows Magnifier. Oh, here we go. Help. Virtual magnifying glass 3.5. If you do a search for Google on that, virtual magnifying glass 3.5, you should be able to find it and install it. Let me know if you need help finding it and install it. I'll help you. Okay, so I've reloaded, just like on the employees, if you look down here on the reload date, it should say when the last reload was. So again, you'll have your blue, which is you tell it when to reload, which should be this date and this time. But then your purple should be the current date with sometime in the middle of the night reload. Did we get the tooltip going yet? Not yet.
No.
Okay, so I've reloaded my working, I've reloaded my adopted. Now, I just want to see if there's a difference, which one I loaded when I created the new year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up. I'm just going to put the object at the top because I don't care about the fun. I just want a list of all my objects. And I'm going to click that button. It clears all the fields. Okay. So now I've got just a nice list of all my objects, and I want to place the working next to my model. Because remember, the model still has what I loaded initially when I created the new year. And I just want to see if there's a difference between the working that I just reloaded. Now, I do expect to see differences in these salary accounts, because remember, these values right here are now coming from the employees tab. They are not coming from the actual working. They're coming from employees that have been reloaded. But anything else, well, there's zero. That's weird. Can't be right. My model values are empty. Okay, so now I want to copy my working into my model since I've just reloaded it. And to accomplish that, you go to Tools, Copy, Clear. What happened to my, Scott, are you seeing this by chance?
Tim, what did you say was 0?
All of my my budget items. And I did
What did
not
you copy?
I haven't copied anything yet.
You just reloaded?
Yep. I know there's a clear model, but I did not check that. I sound like a customer now. I swear I didn't check it. Yeah, I wouldn't have checked it unless it was default checked, but I don't think that's the case. Because that would have done it, but I know I didn't select. I wonder if model source none?
No,
Did that
that's
do
right.
it?
No,
Okay.
that's the default.
Right. I thought all I did was change the Infinite Visions database and the adopted and operating.
Is it because of your scope?
No, my scope is wide open. I mean, I'm not limited by my scope at all. And I'm seeing them. I mean, they're all here, but the amounts, I don't know what happened. Let me look at my baseline, because remember there was a baseline that was, oh no, yeah, so there is no baseline. We haven't saved a baseline yet. That's right.
I'll have to go look at the logs
Yeah.
and see what options were selected.
I still have the log open. So this is a good chance where I would want to, because this log will tell us everything that happened and the options. Maybe I did accidentally check clear model. And if we do that, we need to pop up a warning. But I'm going to save this to a spreadsheet for future debugging. And I'm wondering why my copy data isn't there all of a sudden.
Click refresh.
Is it there for you guys? If you go to copy clear data, I'm betting it is for y'all. Rhonda, do you have that? If you go to tools, financials,
Let me
copy
see.
clear scenario data. Anybody?
I'm checking.
I'm checking too.
Oh, okay. It's the same on the employees too.
No, I don't have that under tools, financials.
Tools, no,
Yeah,
tools, copy clear scenario data,
Oh, yeah, I have that. Mhm. With all the options.
right? So there should be one, and I'm not sure why there isn't right now, called copy from the model or copy from Infinite Visions. And it would take all of my working values here and copy them into my, well, it would copy them into the amount column. And even though it would copy the salary accounts, as soon as you recalculated, it would erase what it copied and replace it with what's being calculated and carried over from the employees. So after you do a recalc, I'm sorry, after you do a copy, you would want to do a recalculation. There might be a checkbox, I can't remember, to recalculate after the copy. But I'm not sure what happened to my options.
Checking. Switch tabs. Did you switch over to the employees and back?
Yeah, it's the same issue on the employees. It just says items. I'm going to do what we call a reset application, and it's almost the same as closing and reopening. Sometimes it's necessary when the program just gets in kind of a weird state. If you try to do too many things at once, sometimes this will be like it's like the turning off and on of your computer sometimes fixes it.
Hey, Scott, are you still there?
Yes.
So my Infinite Visions columns are actually showing my adopted from 2021.
Okay. Did you
And I have actually deleted my scenario twice and redone it.
look at which scenarios were loaded into the, like Tim was just showing you on the, when you create the new year?
Yep, and
Verif-
I did not load 2021. I loaded the correct 21, 22.
But Scott, when you create your new year, you're only given the Infinite Visions database to choose from. You're not given all the other columns.
Oh.
I meant been meaning to ask you about that.
Oh.
So
can-
something's not loading right.
There lies the problem.
No, I still don't have the copy. Okay, it's 2:50. It's probably a good time to take a break. So everyone's homework is to continue to look at your employees, clean them up. Hopefully you have them cleaned up in Visions. Reload whenever you want to. Just tools, employees, reload employees, and then copy them into the model if you want to. Or if you think there's going to be more that you need to work on, you can put off the reload to the model for right now until you're ready to do that. But making
But
sure
is it
that,
actually copying the correct information?
well, right, we got to make sure that you know when you reload, you're going to be asked which columns to reload.
But when we created the database, we went to
No,
our,
you weren't prompted to create the new year. You weren't prompted to change the budget sources. So
not at all. It,
Right.
because you
Right.
right click on last year's adopted and you just do
No.
create scenario and it says new year scenario and that's,
that's a gap. I really didn't want to put all of those options on the create new year, but I'm gonna, wow, what an oversight. Okay, we'll work on that. We'll figure it out tonight.
So let me ask a question then, because if we created our New Year scenario off of 2021 fiscal year, what's loaded into our model is
Incorrect.
2021?
Yeah, all you'll have to do is reload
Reload? Okay.
the budgets and then set the right scenarios. But we need to pick them when you first create the scenario.
But what about employees? Are we gonna have to reload all them too?
No, because the only
Because
Because
you only have to pick the database where the employees live. You don't have to worry about.
But I did pick 21, 22, but it's looking at 2021.
right, in the reload budget, all those other columns are for just the financials. So if you had the right default scenario when you created the new year, that it would have used that for the employees, but it's the financial columns that are a mess.
Right.
And I'm gonna have to think about it. There's already so many options on that create new year, but darn. I will come up with a solution.
But it should only be affecting your financials, not your employees.
Right. And if
Okay.
you reload and then copy them, and Tim's options, if he restarts his app, they'll be there because I confirmed they're there.
They're not.
No, I said if you restart the app. So
So we just need to reload our columns.
correct. Yeah, if you just do tools, financials, reload. I think I changed the label. It's reload.
Reload adopted and working budgets.
Correct.
Okay,
And then copy them. The second step, but I think we do need to add the option to the reload, like we have on the employees,
Right.
to copy
There's
to the model.
Here's copy to model and recalculate on the employees. We need the same option on the reload financials. So it just does it all for you in one step.
Yeah, we'll get
And,
that fixed up tonight.
Yeah, and another thing to think about that we'll talk about tomorrow is start looking at the assumptions and all of the calculations and the factors and the medical benefits and the supplemental pay. You know, that's where a lot of time is going to be spent as well, making sure all of that stuff is reflective of 22, 23. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. Any questions for us before we go? All right, feel free to send us an email if you have any questions, and we'll get them addressed. Thanks everyone for participating.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Tim, this is Kim. I did just verify that the salaries look like they're coming in from the right year.
Okay.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Kim.
we
Yeah.
would hope, we would expect that.
Yeah,
right?
I only
Logically-
checked one. I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah,
Right.
logically, it makes sense.
Okay,
Yeah, with the employees, there's no, budget columns to worry about. It's just the right database.
right, okay.
Yeah, doggone it. Okay. So Tim,